The idea of the Refugee Highway Partnership began from the founder of my organization, reaching out to refugees. God just laid on him the impression of people streaming across the world. And colleagues around him said, that's a refugee highway.
400,000 people came through Hungary. And so I realized that the Balkan area was the channel through which families and young adults and children and grandparents followed the trail to north and west. And I realized that the churches in this region were not prepared for it. So Refugee Highway for me was a way to learn from some experienced people who've been doing refugee work since the Kosovo War, since the Bosnian War, how to respond to people who've been forced out of their homes. We want to go host the conference in a place where there's not a lot of refugee resources and experience, because we want to encourage and lift up those who live here to do refugee work well. We're here in Sarajevo in February 2019 for the 17th annual Refugee Highway Partnership Roundtable. We've had 200 people from 30 different countries in Europe gathering to talk about how the churches can respond to those who have been forcibly displaced. This area is a transit area for many, many refugees coming from Syria, from the Middle East, from North Africa. We wanted to be in a city of diversity. We wanted to be in a city that really understood the pain and the trauma of war and of displacement.
Sarajevo has always been a meeting point of different faiths and religions and ideas.
Really happy you are here. Enjoy Sarajevo, enjoy conference. If you need anything, just ask. People here are warm. Experience that. Make sure, try cevapi, try pita, try Bosnian coffee.
You need to find people that have the same struggles, the same burden, the same passion for these people. Encourage you a lot if you see others doing the same, and you can also learn a lot from other people. Even if the circumstances are different in Europe, the people you receive are the same.
This year for our roundtable, the theme of removing barriers and embracing strangers. Together we are trying to confront and to address those barriers so that more people have the courage and the compassion to embrace those who have been coming to our countries and our cities.
This is a roundtable, this is a gathering of practitioners. Many have also been refugees themselves. What we try to do in these sessions is to think theologically, Christianly, and holistically about what we do. What is the big narrative? God's big story. God's good news for humanity. How is God restoring the world? How is God redeeming and reconciling? So that was part of what we did. And as we tell the stories of our experiences, these experiences become for us a reality. Not just the story of travail and refugee and exile, but the story of God. How do we still tell the story of reconciliation? What does it actually mean to be Christians? Is there a difference between a Christian and a good person? And lastly, what we looked at is the transformation and transposition of the dynamics of the relationships, host and guest. How we, as hosts, as those with the power, the cultural, the economic, the societal, the political power, as Christians, are willing to learn from those, our brothers and sisters who come from other parts of the world, who have journeys that we have never experienced.
I was a refugee. I'm Croat, born in Croatia, raised up in Croatia. I actually came here to serve as a missionary to Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 1991, there was a war in Croatia, and I was living in a hometown in East Slavonia, which was very close to the line where the other side took over. So actually our family house was in a zone of operations. So I was 17 when war started. After months and months having no water, no electricity, and then at the end no food, I decided to leave to Germany. So I left and my father stayed. And so he invited my friend Dražen. But guess what? Dražen is a Serb. He was my best friend, he's a Serb, I'm a Croat. And so his family was threatened, they'll be killed. And so my father didn't want Dražen to get killed. And so he lived with my father in our house, just to be protected. It was very dangerous for my father, because you could say one wrong word, or put a wrong accent, not Croatian, but a Serbian accent to a word, you could be killed. Dražen, to make it really short, became a believer. So he gave his life to Christ because of that act of love. So don't be afraid to share love with people.
In 2019 Roundtable, we offered 7 different workshops all 3 days of our conference. And we spent time talking about very practical things, from helping families and children who have been separated and maybe don't even have school yet or are in trauma. We talked about how to work through psychological issues. We talked about how to help them in their legal process as asylum seekers. We talked about how to build community centers and places of hope and places of rest. But we also talked about the future. How do we train those who have come here to really adjust well and to have a new identity that is a blend of their past but also the new? How do we help them become leaders and to be fully people of dignity and worth, having jobs, having value, and contributing to their society? These workshops were really very holistic. We were talking about the physical, the social, the spiritual, and the emotional needs that refugees face, as well as some of the challenges that those that work with such traumatized people, those workers also have challenges, because it's very tiring and it's very difficult to many years be working with people with those levels of problem.
Most refugees come to us with multiple traumas and don't get traumatized until quite a higher level than us. They're very resilient. They've not had an easy life to start with, so trauma doesn't kick in often. But then you look at what's happened to them before they've left, the violence that they've been exposed to on the journey, loss, plus more abuse, and then you arrive and then nobody actually wants you. And of course, as a worker, you need to have empathy. You want to sit down. These people need presence. They need human contact. But really important for workers to understand the dangers of vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue, where you hear so many stories that you actually become involved in the story and it becomes part of your story. You are part of it.
I remember the very first day, the very first session that we had at the refugee camp, at the gathering. And we had come already with a discussion, with an expectation, with a curriculum of what the training, how the week would go, what the training would be. And we asked the participants, about 50 or so, 52, what is your expectation? What do you want out of this week? Expecting for them to lay the ground of what we were going to do. The first hand went up, and it was, I will never forget that. It was a Sudanese pastor, Presbyterian pastor, from the mountains, from the Nubian mountains, who was a beautiful man in spirit and in sight, tall, lean, pain in his face. And he says, what I want is to forget.
There's kind of the two ends. One end is actually meeting the very practical needs when people arrive. You know, don't go into all this psychological. You know, they need safety. They need everything's not been safe. They need to be able to trust in you as a human being. They need something to eat. They've got health needs. If you've been travelling, on foot from Afghanistan to Turkey, you've got health needs at the end of that. You've probably got health needs even before you left, because we've got people who've been imprisoned and tortured and all that. So really dealing with the basic nitty-gritty. They need a cultural mentor when they arrive, somebody who helps walk them through, to the corner shop. I mean, really basic things that we take for granted, but they will know nothing about. And then empowerment, I think that's the other thing. We are in incredible danger of wanting to do things. For the best reason, we want to do things for people. But one of the best things you can do for someone is to help them help themselves.
I'm born in Sudan, country torn by war. I live my life running. I've been a refugee in 3 different countries. I left my country when I was 7 as a refugee, walking from my village to the border of Ethiopia. That took me approximately 8 days, walking day and night, barefoot. We avoid walking in the day because it's very hot, so we tend to walk at night. And I remember walking, and the majority of the people that were with me, they are over 25 years old, and I'm the only one age 7 or 8. And I remember one night, which is something I will never forget. I fell asleep while I was walking. And that's how it is about being a refugee. So I came back to my village again, and I walked another 15 days. And that was not the heat day, that was in the rainy season, where I could take my 3-hour walking and swimming, because it's flooding, and I was very young guy at the time. So I end up in the north and go to school at the age of 12, learn my Arabic a little bit, and in my 20s, I left again as a refugee. End up in Egypt, the north of Sudan, spent 2 years, hardship and discrimination. I'm not saying it's all Egyptians are bad people. I got a lovely friend here, but I have seen that how human can be something else against the other people. That's something I spent 2 years in Egypt to survive and asking question, why me? After 2 years in Egypt, I left again. I crossed the border, the most dangerous border in the world. It's the border of Israel. I crossed it, and if you ask me today to walk again, to cross that border, I would say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it again. And I end up in Israel, spending my 12 months in prison. My good 12 months in prison. And the reason was because I was illegal. I would say my 12 months in prison in Israel was the best year I ever had in my life. I was released after 12 months, and I went to the city called Eilat in the southern of Israel, worked there as a working in a hotel, hardship, working 14 hours a day. The best thing was, after all, I met my wife there. I have to leave again because as a non-Israeli Jew, cannot get married in Israel. So I have to leave to sign my paper outside and come back again, and then I can do the rest of the thing. But I can't do it because I don't have a legal document that can allow me to go. That's how it is to be a refugee. I left again, and then I came back, and my wife came to South Sudan, and we got married, and then we end up in the UK. And then again, we go back to Africa, spent 4 years and then we came back to Europe. And now we are in Greece. So that is me. So I'm now working with the refugees in Thessaloniki.
People care, good staff care, is at the heart of our values and who we are, just as much as good care for the refugees is. Because if you've got people that aren't healthy, well, they're not going to be doing a healthy job in their ministry.
Well, I think it's important that as the church we're seeing that we are engaged in the real needs that society faces these days, particularly in Europe, with the influx of migrants and refugees, both from the war zones, but also from just the open borders policy that the European Union has. So the church certainly doesn't have a monopoly on the answers, so it needs to cooperate and network with both secular as well as other church faith-based organisations as well. But we as a church, I think we have a leading role in society because of the negative press that tends to be put around with the media, on the internet, things like that, that puts strangers and aliens coming into across our borders, taking our jobs, and all of this sort of thing. There's a lot of negativity out there.
And our vision is that every refugee would be welcomed by the local church, because we know what a difference it makes to refugees' lives when somebody from the local church welcomes them. So we do that by inspiring the church to get involved, by sharing about our responsibility as Christians to welcome the stranger, but also the opportunity to show love and care, but also how many of those who are coming are spiritually hungry to know about Jesus and to connect with churches. But obviously there are sometimes barriers for people getting involved with working with refugees. So we try and help remove those barriers by giving some training, particularly around cross-cultural awareness, understanding the needs of refugees, what they can do to help, maybe what won't help if they do those things, so that ordinary church people feel really equipped to then engage and build friendships and relationships with refugees.
My heart is actually developed from God's heart. Quite often, personally, I have struggled because I love the Lord Jesus Christ, and His command to me is to serve refugees. So I never thought that I will be ended up in refugee ministry, but that's how Providence led me. My desire is to help refugees to come to know the Lord Jesus Christ. But we don't manipulate refugees, but we would like to share this good news. And we visit them, I share my life with them. My style of ministry is, I don't differentiate who they are and myself. So I go to their homes, their camps, and sit down and live and work out, play cricket, many years. Football, volleyball, table tennis. So everything that I know, we use it to help them to gain confidence in themselves. And it was a struggle. When you get there, people don't understand you. They look at you and think, why are you here? Those kind of things have been a difficulty. Even in Germany, it's a struggle because it's normal for people who do not know me to think differently. But my job is to be patient and loving and exercise the same thing that I expect them to do to me, to do to them. By doing that, I think we can win the confidence and show the love of Christ that I expect them to show me, that I learn to show them first. From the refugees' perspective, I think we come into a new place, or when they come, and they look for friends and something that they can familiarize, they can understand what is. In that time, we need someone to come along and understand. Even when you don't understand them, they think they would like you to understand them. So language is an issue. So we have to be patient and loving. On the other hand, the local people or the host nations, I suggest, it will be a helpful thing, they should not to be afraid of them, because most of them have experienced very hardship in their life. That's why they are escaping.
But actually the thing they say they want most is a friend. That's the thing that they most want, is connection with local people. They're really looking for friendships and to build those relationships with local people. And it makes all the difference if they just have one friend from the local church. It makes such a difference to their lives. And they're so grateful. We do so little, but it means so much to them.
It's a blessing to us as a church, to us as a Hands of Hope in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also to our network, Protestant Refugee Initiative. And most of the volunteers serving around the conference are from the network, from the Protestant Refugee Initiative. So we are thankful to God and to the core group that they came to us this year. Yeah, one of the amazing stuff with this conference is so many people, key people who lead organizations and churches responding to refugees, now know in person, and they have experienced Sarajevo. They have been to Bosnia, so they learned about the need. Some of them already offered resources, but there would be a constant need of volunteers, so we are inviting volunteers to join us, to our work, our network, and also resources. Some of the resources we learned about them, some resources are exposed here, but I'm sure there is so much more that can be done.
The roundtable is about encouragement, learn from each other. You are not alone.
Encouraging, inspiring, exciting.
Challenging, stimulating, informative.
Yeah, it's been good to meet people from across Europe who are involved in refugee ministry and hear about what God is doing across the continent, and to join in with something bigger than what is happening in our small area in England.
And to be reminded of the importance of the role that the churches have to play in responding to that massive need.
I learned a lot about the refugee work that's going on, especially how to engage refugees with the gospel.
But just to hear of people's experiences and their stories moves my heart, and I've learned a lot this week.
So I've come here and I've had no clue with what would happen. This is my first time, and actually it's been quite life-altering. I've always felt something for the refugees and been with refugees, but I have felt like vision is happening in my heart. And what God has already put in there is being confirmed over and over again. So I am really blessed. Blessed by the speakers, blessed by the testimonies. I couldn't spend money better than this. So thank you guys.
Yeah, so this has been a fantastic experience.
With a lot of new ideas, with a better understanding how God thinks about some things and how to do my ministry.
You know, when you want to spend some time learning things, you need to be with people who have actually done them. This whole RHP thing is all about that. These are people who have experienced, tasted, felt, and they can communicate that. And so when you hear that, you get fed, you get inspired, you get vision, and you need to come. So this next RHP next year, be there.